I'm 𝗕ance Scaramucci, and welcome to Open Book, where I talk with some of the most interesting and brilliant minds in our world today. So joining us now on Open Book is Cenk Uygur. He is the host and founder and CEO of the Young Turks. He's written a soon-to-be bestseller, Justice is Coming. I love the title. Also love the lightning bolt. How progressives are going to take over the country, and America is going to love it. I have to tell you, as a conservative, when I read the title, I got scared. I could feel my sphincter tightening up, okay, as, oh, my God, this is going to be a disaster. Then I read the book, Cenk, and I'm like, okay, I agree with so much in this book. So I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about, like, when people say, oh, now you're a rhino or something like that. No, I'm for, which I believe you're for, an aspirational economy where we give people the tools necessary to go forward, okay, and see if they can make something of themselves, okay, as opposed to letting them fall through the net, if you will, and smash themselves. Fair enough or no?
Yeah, absolutely, Anthony. And I appreciate you being super open-minded about it. But you're not alone. A lot of conservatives who are reading it are saying, wait a minute, I kind of largely agree with a lot of these things. And it's partly because there's a difference between the Republican Party and just Republican voters, right? Which I partly explain in the book. And so the Republican Party often misrepresents what Republican voters actually want. And secondly, there's huge misconceptions about progressives and what progressives want. And so when you get rid of, like, a lot of the lies in the media and among the political parties, you wind up realizing, oh my God, we actually agree on a lot of things.
Yeah, and our journeys, I don't think, are that dissimilar, but I want you to tell our viewers and listeners about your journey, dovetail it into the Young Turks, talk to us about the Justice Democrats. Yeah.
So I actually started out as a Republican when I was a kid. I came to the country when I was 8 years old, and I grew up in a suburb of New York in central Jersey. And my dad ran a small business. And by the way, we were chased out of Turkey by communists. So we started out as Republicans, logically so, right? And the media back then has made Ronald Reagan look like a demigod. So I thought, obviously you go with Reagan, right? But I was a liberal Republican. I was liberal on social issues and conservative on economic issues. And so eventually the Republican Party left me. I mean, there's no liberal Republicans left, obviously. I think semi-obviously. There's a couple hanging around, right? But and when Bush started the Iraq War, I'm like, I'm all the way out. I don't want any piece of this, okay? And then I came to realize over the years that progressives actually had the right answer. So who are progressives? People like FDR, JFK, LBJ. By the way, Teddy Roosevelt, too. So there's Republicans and Democrats who've been progressives. Mm-hmm. It just means that you're sticking up for the average guy and not for the elites. And so, like, for example, FDR was vicious in fighting against the powerful elites. These days, they lie to you, the mainstream media does, and tells you, oh, no, Democrats are supposed to be soft and weak and just float away like a goddamn cloud, right? No, FDR and LBJ kicked the living crap out of their opponents. And that's how you're supposed to be. You're supposed to fight for the people.
Rightly or wrongly, let me just test this theory on you. We're only as good as the lower part of our economic strata. And I think Teddy Roosevelt understood that. Believe it or not, Henry Ford understood that. There's a very famous story about Jacob Riis, the Dutch journalist in the early 1900s, showing Teddy Roosevelt, who was an aristocrat, the squalor in East New York and the housing tenements that were actually collapsing on each other on the immigrants. And he really pushed for building code safety in New York as a public servant. And then he said, hey, if we don't protect these people, he told the robber barons as president, you know, they're going to come at your house with like tiki torches and shotguns if you don't give them good living standards. Henry Ford went back and said, no problem. I'm going to pay them enough to afford the car that they're producing and put them in a single family house and a good public school system and so forth. Why have we lost that? Is it, we could call it noblesse oblige, or we could call what Roosevelt, they could call Roosevelt a traitor to his class. He's like, dummies, I'm trying to save capitalism. I'm trying to save the democratic system from your greed. Go ahead. What do you say to that?
No, Anthony, you nailed it right there at the end there. So there's a couple of factors, but the overwhelming number one factor is greed, and it's run amok. And so what, as I explained in chapter 4 of the book, we lost democracy because Chamber of Commerce came up with an idea to basically capture the Supreme Court, put activist judges on it, and in the long run, allow for legalized bribery. And when you allow for a legalized bribery, corporations will buy all the politicians and will live under corporate rule. And in fact, other justices like Byron White warned of that. They said this is a mortal danger to our democracy. You guys aren't getting it. They're going to buy all the politicians. And that's exactly what happened. So, and why did that happen? Because of infinite greed. They cannot stop their greed. So Sheldon Adelson gave Trump $100 million twice, right? Through super PACs, etc., both in 16 and 20. Why? Because he wanted all of these things in return, right? He wanted to crush unions. He wanted to make sure that he paid low wages to his workers, but he paid lower taxes, especially the repatriation tax, because Adelson actually made most of his money in China. Like, see, nobody knows that the biggest political benefactor of Donald Trump made most of his money in China, right? But he was allowed to buy Donald Trump. And if you think you can't buy Donald Trump for $100 million, you don't know Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, of course. You can buy a congressman for like, $5,000 donations. I mean,
yeah, 100%. And then one other thing that happened, Anthony, is then corporations got super smart and they figured out, hey, we need good cop, bad cop, both in politics and in media. And as I write in the book, the good cop is if you're so inclined, the way that mainstream media paints it, Democrats are the good cops, Republicans are the bad cops, MSNBC is the good cops, and Fox News is the bad cops. But in reality, they're all on the same team. And that's why we live under corporate rule. But Anthony, most importantly, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, conservative, or liberal, you have got the correct answer is balance. We have to have a society, a government, and an economy that is balanced. If you get out of whack, get out of balance, then you go back to exactly what you were describing. People grabbing pitchforks. And by the way, so they say riots are the voice of the unheard, right? There's a famous Martin Luther King comment. But in 2020, we had riots on the left side, right? Because of George Floyd, etc. And then we had riots from the right-wing side on January 6th in 2021, right? So both are the voices of the unheard. I know no other person on the left will ever say that about January 6th, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is both sides are super frustrated and ready to grab their pitchforks and do serious damage because no one in power will listen to them.
It's interesting. Corey Lewandowski and I used to go to Bernie Sanders rallies. We found that the same people that were going to Donald Trump rallies were going to Bernie Sanders rallies. So this is a grievance. There's a group of people that were once economically aspirational in the country, Cenk, that now feel economically desperational. I want to test something else on you and then get into more specifics of the book. I think Citizens United is the 𝗕cie versus Ferguson of our time. And I just want to explain that to everybody quickly. What was 𝗕cie versus Ferguson? The court ruled you could have separate but equal systems for black and white people. It led to widespread segregation, and it led to a calamity for the African Americans in terms of the ability to integrate into the economy, into the culture. 80 years later, Brown versus Board of Education repealed that, and we started integrating the schools. 𝗕cie and Citizens are identical to me. We've created a separate but equal democracy. So someone like Sheldon Adelson, no problem. Here's $100 billion under the auspices, or $100 million under the auspices of free speech. But he's now got more power in the democracy than his one vote. And I guess what I'm asking you, do you believe that? Because since Citizens United, if you look at corporate welfare and you look at crony capitalism, it is absolutely through the roof. The politicians are bought and paid for. Big Food is putting dog shit into our food. Big Pharma is allowed to lie about all kinds of stuff because they're lighting up the Congress. Am I wrong about this or right about this?
Generally right. So look, 𝗕cie v. Ferguson was one of the worst decisions in Supreme Court history, obviously, and that's why you're referencing it.
No question.
And I just want to give the caveat, of course, that the suffering of Black people in this country is unparalleled, right? So now and as much as we suffer under corporate rule, we're not in chains and they don't take our kids away and sell them, right? Now, having said that, you're not wrong that it created a two-tier system, and one tier, which is a tiny, tiny tier, the top, not even 1%, it's really the top 0.1%. They give the most political donations and get the most favors. Those guys rule us all. They have primaries before we have primaries, and they give us our options. And they say, here's the 2 senators you can choose from. Yes, I paid both of them. Ha ha. Go ahead and have your democracy, right? Mm-hmm. And the rest of us, look, there's a super depressing study in the middle of the book. I mean, I give tons of hope at the end, right? Because I think we can turn it around. But in the middle of the book, this study of Princeton and Northwestern, they studied about 20 years of policy, and they concluded that the bottom 90% of Americans have literally zero effect on American government policy. Well, that's not a democracy. That's a two-tier system where we're all basically working as chattel for corporations. And Byron White warned about this too. He said corporations are something that we created, and the government need not permit its own creation to consume it, is what he said. And that's what happened. Corporations consumed us. And by the way, this isn't capitalism. This is corporatism. And corporatism destroys capitalism. It hates free markets. It loves monopolies. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
And it creates cronyism, and a result of which it reduces the competition. You know, to start my firm SkyBridge today, it would nearly be impossible, Cenk. The first 9 employees would have to be lawyers and compliance people, and so they've killed the ability to create the competition, and the banks know that. The larger companies and I know that. Okay. And it's just a disaster. Let's go into the book.
Can I tell you something quick about that?
Yeah.
So I was talking to another progressive friend who's also a successful businessman, and he cares an enormous about the climate and about getting things right, etc. And he said, you know, what's interesting is that regulations, of course, we think on the left are necessary to make sure we don't have monopolies, make sure you don't have dog crap in your food and all that stuff. But sometimes overregulation can be done by giant corporations to help them kill off their competition.
No question. They like it. The banks snicker at the regulation. They'll go on television and say, oh, we're for deregulation, and they're laughing. Put more regulation on the burner, you know. You said something.
So the answer is balance. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, exactly. You said something in the book I read. I was like, you're so right about this, but I want you to explain why. Okay, I'm going to give you the exact quote. Elections are decided by donors far more than they are by voters. So tell us why.
Yeah, and by the way, there's a poll that shows that 93% of Americans agree with that. The only reason why we don't all think about that 24/7 is because corporate media, which is as I explained in the book, both mainstream media and right-wing media like Fox News, they never, ever talk about it because all the money from the corruption goes straight into their pockets. The politicians raise, like last midterm election, $17 billion, and they spend it all on media. They buy ads with it. So the media has 17 billion reasons to not tell you about the obvious corruption. But as I explained, the American people caught on anyway. And that's why the establishment and mainstream media, et cetera, have lost all credibility. So the donors decide elections. Well, as I explain in the book, in the House, I give examples. The recent elections, 97% of the people who had more money won. So it didn't matter if they were Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal. It didn't matter if they had experience or no experience. The only thing that mattered was how much money they had. After Justice Democrats, which I co-founded, they run without corporate PAC money. So we brought that number down to 87% for an election, right? But now it's rising back up again. And so if there was honest media coverage about politics, all they would talk about is the donors, because the donors control the politicians nearly 100% The rest of it is all fake
Well,
debates, fake theater.
Like you said, there's too many vested interests, so that's not going to happen, you know. And so let me fire this at you. I want to get your reaction to it. Okay, I think the GI Bill was one of the most progressive things that we have done in our country's history. We took Jews and Italians and Turks and Irish that were growing up in the Bowery or lower middle class. They came out of the military. They could go to school. They became doctors and lawyers and accountants, and they all were in traditional blue-collar working class families, became white-collar, and literally transformed America. One, do you agree with that? And then secondarily, what are some programs that we could do today that would have that type of GI Bill effect on the society?
Yeah. So I have first of all, yes, I totally agree. Second of all, I have a proposal that I talk about on the show every once in a while. It's not in the book, but I think that after high school, everybody should be forced to do 1 year of service. And so you could either choose the military, you could choose the Peace Corps, or you could choose something like AmeriCorps where you serve inside the country as a teacher or a volunteer of some sort, right? And the reason for that is I'm not very pro-military at all, right? Like I'm in favor of the military that defends us. I'm not in favor of a Pentagon that enriches itself and engages in offensive wars. So I'm not trying to drive people to that kind of mission. No, the reason that I'm in favor of it is because we've got to bring the country together. We have lost track of each other, and we have lost our bonds. What happened in the wars, the one silver lining was we brought black people and white people together. We brought kids from the Bronx and West Virginia and California and Kansas that didn't know each other, didn't share the same culture together. And they became brothers and sisters, and they fought together, and they bonded, and they became a country, and they became one culture. Now that culture is frayed, and we're now in our own bubbles. We've got to bring people back together so that we can have a shared bond and a shared goal.
Well, there's no question. And just to buttress that, you know, George McGovern, who was a Democrat from the Dakotas, he loved Bob Dole. And he said, we served in the Army together, and we may have been different ideologies, may have different philosophies. Okay. But of course, McGovern went on to write that very famous Wall Street Journal editorial. He had started a bed and breakfast in Connecticut, and it failed. And he blamed some of it on the burdensome regulation. And he said, geez, if I had known how hard it was to be an entrepreneur, I probably wouldn't have put through all that burdensome regulation when I was in the Congress. And so what we're finding, Cenk, and this is the thing I really respect about you, is that we have a lot more in common. You know, when I came out of the Trump administration and I finally turned on Mr. Trump and had to explain why I could no longer support him, you invited me on the show. I don't know if you remember this whole conversation, and obviously you had some, you know, harsh opinions of him, and we talked about my evolution. I got it totally wrong. I thought Trump could have been a transformative politician and broke this sort of party fever, if you will, and just started really just focus on trying to do the right thing for America. And then doing something that FDR did is he went over the top of everybody, went right to the people, explained to them what the hell he wanted to do. And then they wrote to their congressmen and senators and said, hey, we're going with this guy, so get out of the way. Is there a politician in our lifetimes that can do that? And then the next question is, when are you running for president?
Soon. So let me tackle it one by one. So first off, I get that idea that Trump was going to be a non-regular politician and that he could have been transformative. Now, I didn't buy into it from day one because I always thought that Trump was a con man. And you know, Trump University, Trump Charity, it's just one con after another. And so he's been doing this his whole life. So I thought, oh no, they're going the wrong direction, right? And so the idea is right. And that's why when people read the book, yeah, I'm super tough on Republicans in different parts, but I'm also super fair to conservative voters. I explain where no one on the left or the mainstream media explains, which is that the conservative voters had the right instinct. The politicians are full of crap. The media is full of crap. Corruption is rampant, and they hate corruption, and I love them for it. But they just got misdirected towards Trump. And so they were dying for an option that was not the establishment. And when Trump stuck his middle finger, tiny little middle finger, out at the establishment, the crowd went nuts, right? But then Trump being Trump, instead of directing that back towards the people and trying to help others, like Teddy Roosevelt did, like Franklin Roosevelt did, no, he absorbed it all for himself because that's in his nature. And so, and it's me. He's unbelievably selfish, right? I can't believe that you guys, like the right wing, can't see it. It's maddening. On the other hand, look at what people don't want to see, like what they won't acknowledge when they don't want to see it. Joe Biden is now 13 points lower than when he barely beat Trump in the Electoral College. And every Democrat's going, I don't see it. I don't see it. The Democratic leaders, none of them are running against him. Everyone in the media until very recently was like, nobody better run against Joe Biden. Joe Biden is good. He's the only one that can beat Trump. Like, he's the only one that could. First of all, are you saying that there's no Democrat in the country that could beat Donald Trump, who always has like an unfavorability of minimum 55%? That is damning of the Democratic Party. I don't believe that. And I think anybody who believes that is nuts. I think the only person who could lose to Trump is Joe Biden. So he beat him by 4.5 points last time and barely won the Electoral College. And now he's losing by a point or two. And he doesn't have the charisma to turn it around. Democratic Party, wake up. So the correct answer, of course, would have been Bernie 2016. Okay. And so 2020, he got into the cultural stuff a little bit more than he should have, et cetera. Economic populism that he had in 2016 was nearly perfect. But
yeah, they weren't going to give it to him, though. You know that.
No way.
Because he wasn't really a Democrat for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. He's actually the traditional Democrat. He's much more closer to FDR, JFK, et cetera. These new guys are corporate stooges, but that's why they weren't going to give it to Bernie. The media hated Bernie Sanders because he's not in favor of corporate rule. And by the way, that's also why they hate Donald Trump. So since we're in this dire straits, where nobody's got any good options, and both the media and politicians stuff these two terrible options down your throats. So then I got so frustrated, Anthony, and I asked tons of people to run. I asked like half a dozen strong progressives to run. They didn't want to do it. Then I got to the point where I'm like pleading with Democratic governors. Jesus, any of you can beat Biden or Trump, right? Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania beat a Trump clone by like 15 points. Andy Beshear is a Democratic governor of Kentucky. Pritzker's got $1 billion and a popular governor of Illinois. We can go on and on. And so I beseech them. And it didn't work because they love obedience. The Democratic Party has become like the party of authoritarian rule. If the dear leader says it, you must bow your head. That is not what the Democratic Party is supposed to be about. So I got so frustrated. I was like, all right, God damn it, then I'm going to consider going in. And so right now I'm talking to staff, I'm talking to lawyers, I'm talking to clients, I'm getting ready. And so is it 100%? No. But am I leaning in that direction? Yes. Am I getting ready to do it? Yes. Is it an act of desperation? Yes. Like, do I think Cenk Uygur, a name that, 5% of the country might love, but a huge percentage of the country hasn't heard and can't even pronounce, and that I got a great chance of winning this thing? I don't know, but I do know this. I want to give the people an option of not Biden, not Trump, and someone who's honest. And everybody knows this about me, no matter where you are on the political spectrum. I'm going to fight for you. I'm a goddamn fighter. I don't sit around and go, oh, golly gee, there was nothing I could do. No, I fight like hell, and I don't do it for me. I do it for you. And that's a giant, giant difference. And I've proved it 100 times. And every time I get pilloried by the press and everybody else, and I come back for more because somebody's got to do it.
2024? Or when do you want to do this? Like right now?
Yeah. I'm not playing.
Okay.
Like, Biden, look, I think Biden has a 90% chance of losing. I think we're whistling past the graveyard. And
but again, I love it. And you're probably going to end up getting my vote because it's such a disaster out there. And I actually think you're a sensible guy and you have enough emotional security and intelligence to bring in smart people around you. So, but how do you break through the Demopublicans, okay, which is this sort of uniparty duopoly at the top? You know, he's the sitting you're going to run as a Democrat, I'm assuming, right? You're running as a, so give me the game plan. How do you do it?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm under no delusion that it's going to be easy. Like I'm going to come in and they're like, oh, Cenk Uygur is finally in the race. Let's all rally around him. It's not going to happen, right? In terms of the Democratic Party, they're going to throw every kind of, character assassination you can imagine after me.
I bet man.
Yeah. And so, but is there a pathway? Yeah, there's a pathway for a couple of reasons, Anthony, because we're in a unique situation. 72% of Democratic voters don't think Joe Biden's even going to make it through a second term. So they keep screaming, give us another option. And the Democratic monopoly says, no, we won't. Well, okay, sad day for you. Then I'm going to give them another option. Now, is it possible? I mean, is it like super likely? No, I get that it's very, very hard. But at the same time, is it possible that you could catch lightning in a bottle when 72% of Democrats say, give us another option? Yeah. And here, let me play out a scenario for you, Anthony, that is not at all crazy. So our kid Jr. nearly got to 20 points, and now he's out of the Democratic primary, and he's going to run as an independent, right? Mm-hmm. That's because people are desperate for a second option. If I come in guns blazing, proverbially, politically, rhetorically, right, and I get to 20 points, you're telling me that establishment isn't going to panic? I mean, if I get to 25, then there's going to be a 5-alarm fire in D.C., and you know that. And then what's going to happen next? Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, Pritzker, et cetera, they're all going to jump in, right? Because they're not going to let me win. And they know that Biden is a wounded antelope. And so if I start catching that wounded antelope, then all of a sudden we're going to have a real Democratic primary. And that's what I'm after.
All right. So you're flying up to New Hampshire. You're going to Iowa. What's the game plan?
So honestly, the game plan is mainly media. So when you have bare bones budget, and by the way, we'll see, look, my audience and everybody else that cares about this stuff is going to tell us whether they're into it or they're not into it. Because I don't, like, I'm a relatively successful businessman, but I run a small business, right? So I don't have billions of dollars sitting around. I don't have tens of millions of dollars sitting around. Right. I don't have any of that kind of money sitting around. Right. So either it's going to get funded by the people and they're going to say, yeah, go get them, Tiger, right? Or it's not. And if it fizzles out because we don't get the funding, then it is what it is. But just give me a couple $1 million and I'm in this thing. And I got it. And because people misunderstand this, there's a lot of BS about politics. Oh, Rick Santorum nearly won Iowa in one of these years because he went and met a lot of people in diners. No, I love the diners. I love meeting people, but that's not how you win. It's not even close. So, look, I gained painful, valuable experience when I ran for Congress. And I tried the door knocking. I tried the canvassing. I tried every kind of thing that you could imagine. In fact, I raised a lot of money. I even had more ads than my opponents. Okay. None of it works. The only thing that works is media. And so you've got to get into media and you've got to reach people. And then you've got to show them that, yes, there's finally an alternative. If you catch that lightning in a bottle, that thing goes 100 miles an hour.
All right. Well, I wish you great success. We're at the point in the podcast where I have 5 words I read to my authors, and then you can respond. You can give me a 1 word, a sentence. You can let loose, whatever you want to do. Let's go to the first word. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Republican.
Misdirected.
All right. Democrat.
Misdirected.
Misdirected parties. Okay, we're in trouble. We both agree to that. Justice.
Love it. Can't get enough of it. I think it's coming, and I hope that it gets here soon.
Some arbitrariness to it, though, which worries me, to be honest. When I think about the word justice, when I'm reading your book, the rich get better justice in this country. They do. This is why I'm against the death penalty, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of the book, which is that it's supposed to be justice for all. Right. That's in our founding documents. And we all got to fight for justice for all. Otherwise, we're never going to get it.
Exactly. And remember that you're slaves to the law in order to be free. And if we're all subordinate to it, we can have a very powerful country. But under totalitarianism, you end up with cronyism. And we're sort of getting a blended type of cronyism right now, which we have to figure out a way to stop. Progressive.
The true heart of the country. People want to move forward. They want positive change in the world. And these are the ideals that the country was built around.
You need to see their neighbors do better. Ultimately, you feel better about yourself when everyone's doing better. America.
Love it. Can't get enough of it. And I want to bring back democracy and the idea of America that we all grew up loving.
All right. Well, you wrote a phenomenal book. The title of the book is Justice is Coming. How progressives are going to take over the country and America is going to love it. I would encourage everybody, whatever their ideological persuasion is, to please read the book, because I found it fascinating. And I agree with a lot of that book, Cenk. And so I thank you for writing it. I could look forward to following you on the campaign trail. Send me a link to make a donation. This way I can get everybody upset with me. I like getting people upset with me. So send me a link. All right, brother?
All right. That sounds good. We don't have it yet, but I will. But I will give you the link for the book. tyt.com/justice. That's the link for the book. And so, but Anthony, in all seriousness, if I make that decision and we're going forward, I will definitely send you the link, and I appreciate you, brother.
All right. You got it, brother. Thanks for coming on.